Hello, everybody, and welcome to In the Doll Ball. I'm your host, Georgette Taylor, and as always, I'm so excited that you're joining me today. I love the honor of being able to talk to amazing doll creators and artists in this community. And every once in a while, I definitely am always fangirling my way through some of these interviews. And today is really no exception. Today we have the amazing Wyla Eason. She is the founder of the multicultural toy company Olmec Toys, also the creator of Sunman and the Rulers of the Sun. And I want to welcome you and thank you again, Wyla, for being on the show today with
Thank
us.
you, Georgia. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. I'm excited for some of the listeners to hear about how you wind up coming up with Sunman. But also, I just wanted you to share a little bit about your background as well and how you started into the toy and doll industry.
Well, I actually got into it as a mom.
Mhm.
I had no toy experience whatsoever prior to starting Olmec Toys. I was a financial editor with Standard and Poor's. After having gotten an MBA from Harvard and had an undergraduate degree in English from Fitchburg State University, and more background. I am from Tulsa, Oklahoma, which
Mm-hmm.
now we're in the news a lot because
Yes,
everybody's discovered Black Wall Street, which is always good.
right.
Before years ago, when I used to tell people I was from Tulsa, Oklahoma, I would get clowned mostly by Black
Mm.
people because they never didn't know any Black people lived there. So
now,
I'm,
now everybody knows about it. Now everybody's thinking,
yes,
"Oh, yes, I would love to be a part of that." Right? Yes. Hmm.
right. So that's basically my background. And then going forward, as I said, I started as a mom. And it was during 85, during the He-Man Masters of the Universe craze.
Hmm.
And that was a toy my son had, a lot of kids had at that time. And playing with it one day, he said he couldn't be a superhero because he was Black. And I was shocked by that because he was only 3 years old when he said that.
Wow.
And so it was like, okay, let's go get you a Black superhero toy to solve this. And couldn't find any. And then started talking to other mothers. And that's really what led me to create
Hmm.
the toy. So that's how I came into the toy business.
Did you play with dolls before or anything like that when you were growing up? Were you exposed to a lot of that
Uh,
before?
I I wasn't. I remember I had two dolls that I remembered. One was a little doll that you fixed. She had crutches and measles and everything, and that was a doll where you could play a nurse.
Hmm.
And I remember that doll, and then a Shirley Temple doll. Those were two dolls I had, but I was mostly an outdoor tomboyish girl. I played outside and
Hmm.
hopscotch, jump rope,
Right.
marbles. I was more into activities and not as much as role play, which I think
Hmm.
a lot of dolls, and nor do any of the other little girls around me that I
Hmm.
remember
Right.
anybody being that heavily into
Into dolls.
dolls.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so funny. I was pretty much like that too. I didn't really collect a lot of dolls or play with a lot of dolls. I was outside a lot of times. I played, kick the can, all the street games in New York, where I grew up. So that's interesting that I find myself doing this as well. But what I found interesting is that you said when your son said he couldn't be a superhero like he was playing with, and you found that there weren't any. What made you decide, well, instead of saying, well, maybe something will show up, or instead of saying, well, I'm just gonna hit the ground running and create this for him.
I've been asked that, and it's probably only recently that I've kind of figured that question out. Like,
Hmm.
he wasn't the first kid who said that. Lots of other mothers have
Hmm.
encountered that. You weren't even in the toy business. Why did you do that? I actually think it had a lot to do with the fact that he was only 3 years old,
Mm.
and it was actually fear was the motivating factor because I was worried that if and we didn't even have a television in the house, so it was like even more
Wow.
of a concern to me to how
Hmm.
this could in fact, we didn't get one until later because people told us, I was in Brooklyn at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and they told us if you don't get a TV, you'll never get a babysitter because all the kids won't come over there.
They will come over and play with them. Right?
So the word will get out in the neighborhood.
What were they going to do? Oh my gosh, right? If we
Exactly.
didn't have a TV.
Read a book. Oh no.
Oh no.
So I think I was just very, very worried.
Mhm.
I don't know why that hit me so hard, but it did. And
Mhm.
I think it had to do with if you've already limited yourself at 3,
Mhm. Oh
in
yes.
terms of your creativity. And remember, toys are total imagination. They don't come with the script. You
Mhm.
can play and become anything you want. So if he's already decided superhero is out because of his skin color, what else is out? And
Mm.
at such a very, very young age when you should be able to think of yourself and be absolutely anything that you want to be. So
Yeah.
I have to say the motivating force was fear. I was very, very concerned and shocked that he had
Mhm.
that kind of an image.
Right.
That
No. I could definitely understand that, and also knowing a little bit about your background too, the fact that you were, raised in a community that had a really strong Black identity, right?
right.
I can understand where that fear would come from. You have a child, and this is something that he's around all the time. Still, it's this strong Black identity, but yet when he sees a toy, he can't relate to himself being that. So I think, yeah, I would probably have probably done the same thing you would have done because like, and you understood, the idea of how you think about yourself, from those ages into adulthood as well. If you can't see yourself there at 3, then how can, and you start to believe that, how can you see yourself accomplishing anything else, as a Black man in this country?
Right. And I think also because I started doing research to understand it more, I actually had the honor and privilege to speak with Dr. Kenneth Clark,
Mm-hmm.
who, with his wife Mamie,
Yes.
did the Black Doll study that led to the Brown versus Board of Education decision.
Mm-hmm.
And that study was done, that rule was overturned because of dolls,
Right. Yes.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt I needed to talk to the authority in that area. And when I
Mm-hmm.
talked to him, he further emphasized the importance of what we now call representation,
Right.
imagery, being able to see something and how much that affects kids. And he was able to use dolls to point out kids assuming all inferiority traits to themselves through
Wow.
that study. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and so I basically asked him if he thought this was something that was needed that I should do, and he said
Mm-hmm.
yes. So I think that added to it, and then talking to other mothers and
Right.
hearing their concerns, that was my preliminary type of research.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of those factors are a part of what, and of course the whole ignorance is bliss thing. I didn't
Right.
think it would be anything difficult to do.
I was going to ask you that because I know, coming from a place where where you have this idea and you're like, okay, let's get this done. You don't think about the things behind that. Like you said, ignorance is bliss. I know when we started doing the Big Beautiful Dolls, we had no clue what to do with a doll. Like, we had no clue. We just started doing research, and like you said, everything we felt was it could be done until you start doing it in that industry and you realize. So I want to ask you, I know you didn't have any background in creating a toy at all. How did that start for you to get into that?
Actually, the best part was, the universe lines up for you. My lawyer had a toy client who was not
Mhm.
competing with me, and through basically he made the introduction, and one introduction I found out this is how it's done. If you're doing injection molded plastic toys,
Mhm.
they're pretty much all done in China. But before you can even begin the process, you've got to get an artist, you've got to draw it. And back then, before computer animated design,
Mhm.
you had to hand draw every view to create a 3D view, front, back, side, bottom, top, etc. And I was lucky, my cousin's boyfriend at the time, who was also from Oklahoma, Floyd Cooper. He's now, well, rest his soul. He was a very famous children's book designer. That's where his legacy went. When I met him, he was just a budding artist.
Right.
Trying to, come up, as they say. And he was the one who did my original designs.
Oh, nice.
So once I had the original design, I was able to take that to a factory in China and then go through the process of getting the sculpt right. That was probably the most difficult two things: skin color and sculpt.
Yes. Yes. That still sometimes still tends to be the case, but okay. Even now,
exactly.
You'd be surprised.
No, I know. I totally understand.
Hair is a big deal now.
Hair
yes.
yeah, but I was doing a boy's.
He was doing a boy's toy, so you were good.
I didn't have to deal with, and hair is becoming great. I guess it's purpose toys now that has all the great hair.
Great hair, yeah.
And but yes, you're right. Those factors are critical. But that's how I kind of got into the process of what it takes to create a toy.
When you were into the process, were you amazed at all the intricacies and the different levels of creating a toy? Because when you see it on the shelf, you're like, oh, it's a toy. You don't think about all the other things behind what goes into that. Did you feel a little overwhelmed?
I think at the time I was so curious and into the process, and I didn't think about it as that difficult. I kind of knew it was going to be a process. So it was like, okay, how do I get this done? And then into packaging. I had the benefit of knowing that I was trying to create a toy that was going to fit into play with the He-Man toys. So I had an up in terms of how I wanted it to look, how I wanted it to be designed, what the packaging was going to be, a lot of those features. But then, yes, the amount of details to create a comic book, which I did with my sister, and we're doing, if you look at the old comic book, you can see how amateurish it is with hand-drawn penciling in colors that my sister and I were doing.
But that's what makes it beautiful. That's really when you look back and see where you started to where it's at now. It just it's like it had to be there in order to get where it's at. So yeah, it's still beautiful.
So yeah, but yeah, the process, when you come out of it, then you do have a tremendous respect for what it takes to get a toy product on the shelf. You've got all the way down to things that you don't, and you do it more with dolls than with boys' action figures, but you still got to paint the eyes. You've got to figure out what the clothing, but mine, as you know, most boys' toys don't have any clothing.
Don't have any clothing.
It's not about dressing and undressing. It's
not
fashion. It's about action.
Exactly.
And so, yes, I did. What are the colors, all the decisions, the tremendous amount of decisions have to be made in creating one product.
Well, like you said, I think because you had the curiosity and you kind of already had a vision of what you really wanted to look like and how you wanted to fit within the other universe, within the He-Man universe. I think that definitely helped you not feel so overwhelmed because you at least knew where you were going with that. So,
exactly. Yeah.
So after you created this product, how did you market it? Because we're talking, this is 1985. There's really no African-American, boy toys out there, really. Action figure
and there's
toys.
No internet.
And there's no, we remember suffering from that too. And we started in 1999. So there was still no place to really market that. What was your marketing like back then?
Well, at first I thought that's where the naivete and the frustrations all come in, is mass market. I'll go to these stores, I'll get it on the shelf, just like Mattel.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I said the naivete, the not knowing this business and
Hmm.
this industry. Then I discovered that toys are presented in February. I was coming out with the product in June.
Mm. You were a little
Um,
bit late there.
yeah, I had no idea that
Hmm.
buying decisions had been made. I didn't know that was the way. I think they're more flexible now, but
Hmm.
back then it was hard deadlines.
Hmm.
So I basically started selling through street vendors, barbershops, beauty shops, people who worked at post office, clubs and organizations who were raising money, churches,
Wow.
neighborhoods, bodegas, anybody who had a side hustle of
Were you,
selling anything to anybody.
were you selling them out the back of your car too? 'Cause-
Almost,
almost. You know,
almost.
that's the bootstrapping marketing. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So that was how I developed
Hmm.
this is sales.
Hmm.
And then actually, I think it was only until after we got into a store back in the day, I know you know that one ad in Ebony magazine reached, I think, 85% of all black people
Hmm.
at back
Yeah.
in those
Yeah.
days. Between them and Jet,
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say between them.
you covered the entire black population
Yes, pretty
of
much.
America, pretty
Hmm.
much. And we took out a full page ad.
Wow.
And I remember that because I remember it being very expensive. It was $25,000 back.
Ooh,
Incredible.
that's a lot of money back then.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot now, right now,
Yes, right.
for an ad, a
That's-
single ad.
wow.
But and it was after that,
Hmm.
once we got into stores, that was what was helped propel it. And then we would do in-store signings and go to certain events. And then back then also there was Black Expo US
Yes.
traveling that went around to all the major Black cities, and we would
Hmm.
take out booths and we would sell in that kind of arena. But that's
Right.
basically, as you know, what it took way back then.
Yeah. Definitely, like you said, a lot of not just marketing, but a lot of belief really in what it is that you have to offer. You know, because you really had to have a lot of belief in what you were creating. Because I think you were really pushing against the grain of the market that was out there.
Right.
And yeah, and how was that for you? You know, because I know you had to go to meetings and talk about, promoting your product, trying to get money in for your product. How was that when you were out there marketing and talking to the people who were in charge of the toy industry, to say, hey, this toy is valuable and viable to the community out there. How much pushback did you get?
Well, actually, I pretty much never started with the toy. I
Mm,
always started with demographics, buying power, and
hmm.
then changes in perception. In fact, back then, and I haven't even called the census, but back then the Census Bureau was my
Hmm.
research department.
Okay.
I relied upon what are the major cities where the majority of blacks live, what's the income
Hmm.
levels, how does this match up against the black buying power
Hmm.
and the amount of toys that are sold, and then extrapolating what percentage must we be of that whole.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I would always start with these are the demographics, this is the growth. And I remember way
Hmm.
back then, back in 85, I was saying by 2020, by 2030, America's browning up and there will be a majority brown population in the country. In
Hmm.
fact, I said that in one presentation, and I remember a guy in the back yelling, I'm glad I'll be dead at that point.
Oh my God.
That kind of stands out as
that
like,
kind of,
okay.
that kind of shows you what they were thinking. That's like,
Yeah.
wow.
And
Okay.
the pushback I got was, and it's hard for
Mm,
anybody to imagine because back then no one was talking about a multicultural market. That
mm,
kind of didn't exist back
right.
then.
Right.
I was also told that mothers may care about what dolls their girls play with. They may want a black doll for their girl, but they don't care what their boys play with.
Mm,
So that was
wow.
also something that I got back then. And I was also told if you really had an idea, Mattel would have already done it. So I was dismissed at every level. But
Wow.
it was the toy sales that I was getting
Mm-hmm.
that were helping me, and then being able to point to Black hair care sales, Black
Mm-hmm.
pantyhose sales, anything I could point to, Black skin care, anything I could point to where you could clearly see
Mm-hmm.
the African American market was spending
Right.
money in this area, and if they're spending money in this area and they have this amount of children, it would make sense
Mm-hmm.
that they would also spend money on toys for their boys
Right.
that looked like them. And then I
Mm-hmm.
would bring in the psychological importance from Dr. Clark about being able to see a toy that looks like you will help with children's aspirations
Right.
and their achievement later in life. So it was never, and then at the end of these kinds of presentations, I would say, and here's the toy that represents that.
Well, that
So
was great though. That was really, really smart not to lead with the toy.
yeah, and that was that. So it was always an educational tour. It was always, that was the major way I had to sell. I still wish I had some of the flip charts, because I would, would bring charts out and flip them back. That was my sales pitch.
Wow, that would have been priceless to have a couple of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, still around. So you had Sunman. How many other characters did you have within that line?
I had Sunman, and then we had a total of 8. We developed another Black character, and then we had a Latino character,
Okay.
Asian,
Mm-hmm.
and Native American.
Okay.
And then we had other characters that were more browner skinned. So you
Mm-hmm.
might look at them as Southeast Asian, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the whole group. And only one bad guy, because I wanted to spend the energy and the money on creating different shades of
Okay.
characters. That was
Okay.
part of the importance of it all.
Okay. So no, it's funny now because like you said when you were thinking about doing Sunman, you had an idea of him being part of the He-Man line.
Well, what I was thinking was I needed him to fit into play. In other words, the minute you introduced it, kids would say, wow, it's the same size. He's got all the same muscles. He can play with the same toys. So that whole concept of it would seem like it was a part of it if the kid put it next to their He-Man collection. It could ride all the same vehicles, etc., and beast, etc. So it fit into play as if it were made by them.
So for it to be complementary in a way to that.
Yes, that was the whole idea. So it wouldn't sit out here as, where does this toy, what does it relate to? Where can do I play with this by itself? Or, oh, wait, it's the same size as what I'm playing over here with He-Man. Let me add it to that collection that I had. So it was intentionally designed to fit into that collection.
That is great, but especially now. I mean, with the 40th anniversary for He-Man, the fact that now you're being incorporated into that universe.
Exactly.
So it kind of helped that you thought about it that way, because the children who were playing with He-Man automatically now would know about Sunman, because they've seen him and they're like, well, he already fit into my into the line anyway.
Yep. No, that totally, yes, it was intentional so that it wouldn't stand out by itself. And I think I'm noticing with some of these other toys, when they're introduced, they do seem to fit like other Black dolls will fit in. Oh, she can wear Barbie's clothes. Or be in her house.
And it's funny because my son was a big He-Man and Sunman lover, so I purchased plenty of them.
Oh, great. Thank you.
What I'd like to ask you is, how did you get involved with having Sunman become a part of this anniversary for He-Man?
Actually, I didn't know it was their 40th anniversary. How this all happened was Ed Duncan, who is the head of Boys Toys, reached out to me actually through LinkedIn, and just said, hey, I don't know if he'd seen a story or seen something, but it was during COVID. It was 2020, right?
Okay.
And he said, I something like, I saw an article about you. I just wanted to reach out and say, I think you did a great job with Sunman, and I head up Boys Toys. And by the way, I'm African American. And I was like, wow, this is an African American who heads up
Wow.
the whole Boys Toys.
Mm-hmm.
And so I reached back out to him to like, thank you, let's talk,
Mm-hmm.
just because I was fascinated.
Right.
I had no idea, as I said at the time, that it was their 40th anniversary, I think in 2022, I think just last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so we started talking, and through the conversation, that's when it came up that maybe Sunman could be a part of that line. I still don't
Wow.
think at the time it was thought through that, oh, this will be 40th
Mm-hmm.
anniversary, la 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 la. It was rather organic how it all happened and
Mm-hmm.
came about. And
Wow.
I think they were already thinking multicultural.
Mm-hmm.
They had one Black character, Claptrap, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
that they could have developed more or done something with, but acknowledging that this is what's missing from this line.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
especially visible 40 years later, it's missing from this line. And so it just became an idea that would be good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what's kind of unusual is partnering with a really small company, if you will, a
Right.
company that really wasn't even in business
And
anymore.
right. Yes, exactly. When did you go out of business? I mean,
In
when did you stop?
99.
Oh wow. Okay. In
Yeah.
99. Yeah, that probably does make sense because I think when I was looking, I remember we were getting ready to do the dolls, the big beautiful dolls, and we were looking for toy companies that were owned by African Americans. It was very hard to find any. And I do remember running across yours, but I don't think you were in business then.
No, yeah.
Yeah, yes. I know we were talking about Mattel and the anniversary, and and Duncan speaking to you, who was the who heads up the boys' toys at Mattel, when he reached out to you and started talking to you more about Sunman. How does that make you feel as it being full circle for you? Like, because when you started out, you were saying that this is kind of, you wanted it to complement He-Man because it was things that boys played with, and you really wanted to have African American doll featured in that. So how does that make you feel now after all of these years that that's something that is really happening?
Well, it's like I like to say, pretty delicious irony, because had they had Black characters, I never would have started Sunman,
Mm.
period.
Oh
I
wow.
wouldn't have had to,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
because they would have covered that, and it wouldn't have been a need
Mm-hmm.
to create the product whatsoever. So I find, and the reason I say irony is because this is the company that, because they lacked any Black representation, brown, any color in their characters, and it was such a huge line. It was so overtaking kids' imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Until now, to be a part of that is, I think it's fantastic, and I think again it's like, as they say, live long enough, you know, you might see things become pretty much a full circle. So
Mm-hmm.
I just find it just fascinating.
Yeah.
And when I just step outside myself and say, wow, something you did almost 40 years ago, now it's back out, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a part, more people know about it now than knew it back then, because
Mm-hmm.
now it's a part of the
Right.
whole Masters of the Universe Mattel line as
Right.
a partnership. So
Wow. That
I,
is so
I just
cool.
love the way things have worked themselves out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That is
just 40 years
beautiful.
later.
That is, like you said, it is really irony. It's so, it's wow. But again, if it's for you and it belongs to you, it's what happens. That's how I feel.
Exactly.
The universe really, the universe has its own masters, right? And how things are
Exactly.
controlled in the universe, right? What I want to ask you is, after
Uh-huh.
you created it, what did your son feel like? What did
Oh,
he say when you created that? That when you first bought the Sunman home when he was really young, how did that make him feel?
I think it made it feel great, but what I remember most, what really let me know it was I went to pick him up from nursery school, and when I went into the building, went into his room, all these kids swarmed me. They swore, and they were like all excited, and I was like, "What's going on?" And they said, "Menelik told us you could make us any toy we want." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
You have everybody lined up placing orders like all of a sudden you could just make individual toys. That is so cute.
And so I didn't know the impact until
Mm-hmm.
the kid swore me. And then I said, "Oh, so he's been talking about it. And he's
Aww.
been saying, this is what my mother made for me, etc."
Aww.
Because he didn't say, "Oh, wow, mom, this is what," da, 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 because I think probably he was so a part of the process. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
here's the prototype. What do you think of this? Here's this. What do you So
Mm-hmm.
by the time it actually was there,
Right.
he had gotten used to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know it meant that much to him
Right.
until the
Right.
kids let me know.
Oh, that is so. Well, how does he feel
So,
about it now, being a not 6 years old, not
oh,
3 year old, right?
you know, it's very interesting to me. He tells me, "Hey, you're a pioneer, you were ahead of your
Mm,
time." He's very, very proud and excited about everything that is going on for
yeah.
me right now. He's
Oh,
very happy that I'm getting these flowers, if you will,
right.
later
Yeah.
in life after I did something that I did as a mom, not
Right.
really expecting anything from it other than, hey, kids who look like you are now going to be able to have toys that look like them, boys. And
Right.
I think that's what made this product different, and in many ways, more, I don't want to say the word threatening, or got the least acceptance in the industry, because it was
Mm-hmm.
boys. And that was area, and boys' toys are about power,
Power.
play,
Mm-hmm.
win, lose, combat.
That's right.
That's what boys' toys live in,
That's
that
right.
kind of zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize until many, many years later that that was probably what the buyers were reacting to,
Mm-hmm. Or afraid of.
why
Mm-hmm.
the rejection was so high.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it does present power. It does
Yeah,
make you feel then that you have power. And, I
exactly.
mean, let's, at the end of the day, let's be realistic, that our, being, in this country as African Americans, that's the least thing that they want us to feel. We have power over a lot
Exactly.
of things in our lives. And so I definitely think that definitely was one of the challenges for you. You're a woman
Right.
coming into a
Into
very
an
male
industry
dominated space.
very closed too. I'm sure, maybe one thing that amazed me when I got in the industry was, my God, everybody knows everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Think this
Yeah.
is a big industry? No, they all know each other.
Mm-hmm. They all
It's
know each other.
And I didn't realize I walked into a club,
It
if
really
you will,
is.
with memberships that had been almost familiar, like generational memberships
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
toy industry.
Wow. That's really interesting to think about it that way. I think, even when you look at it now, even in the industry, when you look at toys in general or dolls, it's still very male dominated. But but you have pioneered and taken something and truly um, given us a great opportunity to see toys in a different way for a different culture, and you also have made it possible for children of all colors, really, to imagine themselves being heroes. And I think that's the most, I think that's one of the most important things that you could ever do for anybody, is to make them feel powerful and be seen and be heard, and giving them an identity, to see who
Mhm.
they can truly be. So I want to thank you,
Well, thank you.
for doing that, for the young men in our community, and for a lot of the other, multicultural young boys that are coming up, and seeing your toy and know that, it can represent who they are too. So that they can be represented, because I think that is always so important in this industry, is representation. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, sometimes it takes longer than it needs to, but the fact that it does happen is what's important. And
Yeah.
you were definitely were a pioneer in that. And I want to thank you so much
Well,
for your
thank you.
contribution. I know it was just to help empower your child, but it helped empower so many other children along the way. So many.
Well, that was my goal too. By helping him, I was helping lots of other kids, lots of other boys. And when I see them today and they realize I'm the person who created the toys, they get excited. It makes me feel really good. Like, I had this toy when I was a kid. I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, my son did too. Oh, where can people reach out and find out about the Sunman toys now? Is there a
Oh,
place where they can
okay.
go? Mhm.
We do have a website, official Sunman, and .com, and official Sunman Instagram.
Mhm.
And also Walmart, Target, and Amazon
Mhm.
is
Okay.
where you can buy the toys
Okay.
now.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you so much, Wyla, for being here and for again introducing Sunman to the world. We really do
Well,
appreciate that.
well, thank you, Georgette, and thank you for creating this venue so that people can find out more about the dolls.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for being on In the Doll World with me.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.